Welcome back to Cultivated Live from Planet 13 in Las Vegas. This is our third day.
Yes.
I feel like I'm never going to leave Planet 13.
We live here now.
I think I'd like to live here. What we've seen so far, we've had tons of great interviews. If you've been following along, it's amazing. We've also seen gummies being made
Yes.
on Wednesday, and then we saw beverages being canned on Thursday.
It's a relaxing day today.
It's like nobody's working yet because Friday is the day they sell them.
Right.
Yes.
Right.
And so it actually was busier yesterday of the dispensary, and I'm sure we're going to see it influx now. So we're heading into our third day. We have Elizabeth Kase with us. I'm going to get the law firm correct. She's a lawyer in New York, Ruskin Moscou Faltischek. I got it. But importantly to all of that, and there's been two other people that I've known for over 20 years that have come in, but you, I think, I've probably known longer, except for my brother, than anybody we've talked to. Because we went to camp together.
It's unbelievable.
You went to summer camp?
Yes.
We went to sleepaway camp together
Yes.
when we were like 10.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah. So we did an event in New York in my previous iteration of Cannabis Media, and we did an event in Brooklyn. Mm-hmm. And after the show, I must have mentioned something. Oh, yeah. I must have mentioned something about being a kid from Massachusetts, went to camp in New Hampshire. And he said, I went to camp in New Hampshire afterwards. And I said, yeah, we went to camp together. And that was now a year, 2 years ago almost.
Yeah. And then what a long, strange trip it's been since then.
Yes. Well, yeah, because New York was on the cusp then.
What has happened?
Cutting edge.
Nothing.
We're
Ready to
to
go.
pounce. Yeah.
But it hasn't happened such.
No, it's been the slowest rollout, I think, of all the states.
Yes.
And it's sort of ironic and strange that New York, of all places, is having the biggest problem with getting their acts together. Because forever and ever, New York has had this sort of taffy pull of wanting to do right in the cannabis space. And obviously, it's the center of the financial world, too. So there's just there are these dualities in cannabis. Mm-hmm. And I think what happened was this whole program almost got hijacked by politics and an agenda that could have jived very easily with the overall capitalism of cannabis, too. But it's sort of like it's cutting its nose off to spite its face.
Yes.
So
it's been challenging to watch. I want to choose my words carefully, not to offend anybody. It's been challenging to watch as an outsider or an observer because there is this huge pent-up demand for legal cannabis. There are people who have grown such that there's actually a real demand for the cannabis. Like there's growers who need to get it out the door. And there's people willing to start and open and do the thing. But there's only 28
stores open now. And as an attorney in the space, there's just been so many miscalculations of what MRTA stands for and how MRTA is actually implemented into society. So first and foremost, one of the biggest mistakes I think MRTA made was to decriminalize cannabis before introducing a regulatory framework to sell and legalize the commercial aspects of cannabis. So what you saw immediately were proliferations of legacy stores that had always existed, but now they're loud and proud. They're everywhere. Yeah. And so it created this I'd say like almost a public relations disaster, because I don't think that the lawful or regulated marketplace will look like the legacy marketplace. Right. It won't smell like the legacy marketplace. It won't have the same affect on the city itself. But you've turned people against cannabis because it has been so haphazard, almost Wild West in the way that it's come to be. So only 28 stores open, which is insane because this law went into effect 2.5 years ago. Yeah. So what are we waiting for? And people are sitting on the sidelines. They've invested their entire life savings. We have, we have farmers who are sitting on crops and product, and they can't move it.
A little bit like Field of Dreams, like grow it, and people will buy it. Except there's nobody to. There's
absolutely, and the idea of the conditional marketplace, sort of this, let's jigger the system, let's get this rolling with people who are just as involved, those that were hemp farmers, distressed farmers, et cetera. And the goal and the intention was so pure and good But it, of course, is marred with litigation.
Yes.
Because New York is also probably the most litigious state in the U.S. And that
you smile because you're a lawyer, so it's okay.
We said from the get-go that ancillary businesses were going to do well in the cannabis space, and obviously one of them is the law space, because there's just so much ripe for the breakdown and the correction. Yeah. So I can't even say that it's been a correction in the commercial space. It's really a correction in the legal space that's happening first.
Yeah.
Well, it's to me on the outside, it is super interesting to also watch customers go back and forth and have no idea what's going on.
Yeah.
Right?
No
like
idea.
This is such a small bubble of people who understand what this looks like, but customers are out shopping in New York thinking that they're shopping at legal stores.
And they're thinking that they're buying products that are okay.
Right.
Because they're packaged, they're sold, openly and notoriously. That's a legal definition and term. And there's no real understanding that this is like still not the real thing.
Yeah.
We haven't heard, thank goodness, of a lot of, products liability issues or poisonings or, any of those things. I mean, certainly in that respect in the open stores. I mean, there's always a worry about fentanyl and other additives that are in, the true legacy black market, if you will, underground. That's always a possibility. But from a person who's in the space to make it better and to make it corrected, if you will, that's a big problem. People don't know what they're buying.
Right. And we've seen it even in the Canadian landscape. And then when they do, they can be disappointed, right? Because it's not the same. You just said yourself, it doesn't have the same vibe as going into a legacy dispensary and that sort of underground feel. Yeah. It has a very regulated feel in many cases, especially when IDs are being checked. It's like it has a very different... And
sanitized.
Right, sanitized. There you go. It is different. But I went to... there's one in Syracuse. Or the one in Syracuse, the dispensary, and it feels great.
Yeah.
And people are happy to be there, and it's huge, and it's like...
That's great.
Yeah.
And Long Island, where I hail from, is it's its own sort of strange land, because part of what cannabis is and isn't in New York is the zoning and the real estate that's behind it. So essentially, in certain places, there will be tons of stores.
Yeah.
That's not true in Long Island.
Right. There'll be zero? No,
it's
not zero, but it's not
They
it's not
will
a lot.
be so far and few between. It'll be the delivery market that will take hold.
Yeah.
Because everybody opted out, which was their, local municipal right.
Yeah. But we've even seen, like that, sometimes it lasts forever.
Yeah.
But also sometimes tax dollars are like, well, we don't need it to go somewhere else.
Yeah, they changed their mind.
Yeah.
Mississauga is an excellent example of that in Canada. That's like a community just on the edge of Toronto.
Well, and to, I would say to the credit of the municipalities, their initial sort of first glance at this was, how does this look and what is it actually going to be? And 2.5 years later, they may not have been so far from the mark when it's so chaotic and really strange. So I think they're waiting for things to kind of get into place, and then I think there'll be a domino effect of other municipalities joining in, which is their right. You can opt out and then opt back in, but if you never opted out, you cannot opt out.
Yeah, that's smart. And every state thinks they are unique in doing what they're doing in their approach, but also every state, like especially New York, has like competition on the borders, right? New Jersey is moving, I would say, faster, even though it's a relative term, to their adult use program, Connecticut as well, Vermont as well, and Canada, right on the northern border.
1,000%.
And so it's like you can go as slow and try to get it as perfect as you want, but consumers are going to buy cannabis.
To what end?
Right.
You're missing it. It's right there. It's all around you. And you can't get your act together. So it's incredibly frustrating.
Yeah. It is, especially, I'm sure it's frustrating in real time as a New Yorker, but it's also frustrating to watch the industry pin their hopes on a vast New York market that'll be, $4 or $5 billion, whatever it is, but also have it be a very
and
slow,
job creation and all of the rest of it.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Well, there was a conversation I was having last night. Can't remember with who, but that's sort of standard issue in Las Vegas. But thinking about a time down the road, right? Yeah. 3, 4, 5 years down the road, where you look back on these times it was really hard to get going, but now we're at a marketplace or a part in the sector where it's now we see people start to close. We see the other end of it, right? This proliferation and then a right sizing. Is that a 5-year horizon in your view?
Yeah. So
Yeah.
I have so many clients in the space trying to break in. Actually, we're in a license application phase right now in New York for most of the adult use market, including, by the way, registered organizations or our medical market. That's actually opening up and it's getting wider. Very exciting.
Oh.
But the way that the litigations had happened along the way has made a lot of people who've been waiting for this moment say, you know what? I might sit on the sidelines for the first rounds and I might pick up a distressed company instead of being sort of that pioneer.
Yeah.
And I think that they're taking notes from other states where they've seen this sort of
the role.
First to market doesn't always
mean best.
Or that it is an easy position to hold.
Correct.
Either. Yeah.
From any of those perspectives.
I agree.
We've seen now, I think, in the Canadian market, like wave 2 of like retailers who know what they're doing. The other ones are going out of business or in the process of running out their first lease.
Yeah.
But you see better products, better brands, better retailers, better operators overall.
Right.
And like it is this, second wave, if you will. And someone once said to me at the beginning of cannabis, when all these brands were entering the space in Canada, like we have to be in this first wave of brands. And someone said, there's always new microbrews coming up. Like they didn't miss legalization 100-something years ago. Like there is this normal cycle. And I think it'll put a lot of pressure on the first cycle with its delay, but there will be distress.
You can look at other industries for that guidance. I mean, certainly like bottled beverages, bottled waters, or all of these brands. It's been around forever, but they keep sort of making it better, more interesting, more diversified, and I think that lends some guidance for the cannabis market.
Yeah.
Products are always being developed. Actually, that's one of the greatest things about coming to MJ Biz is sort of seeing the innovations that are taking place and seeing how okay, this has been around forever.
Right.
But it just keeps getting more interesting and creative. Yeah. So that's why I come.
And actually, Krista had some stats yesterday about the people's purchases the first time they're in a store and then second and third. And there is this hunger for new.
Yeah.
That may be unique to the sector, but also it's that is what that's the most exciting part, at least from
makes
my
sense.
perspective.
And people are getting more comfortable in the space. You know, it's kind of like fine tuning a palate.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I'm excited about New York, and not just to go to one of the 28 right now, but like a full-fledged market where I love the point when we were in other markets, but here in Nevada, but also in Toronto, it's like when people are like, God, there's a dispensary everywhere. I'm like, yeah, there is.
Yeah.
Yeah. And the taboo, that sort of
it starts to go down.
Failing away.
Yeah.
Exactly. It's a good thing.
At the beginning, people are like, oh, there's dispensaries everywhere. And now you never hear people in Canada talk about it or some areas of Michigan either. It happens and then people all see it.
Yeah.
And then it just becomes something that is standard issue.
Normal.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, that's a ways away in New York.
There's some time.
It is. I mean, I live in a small town on Long Island, and, I started to think about cannabis again, and many do, juxtaposed to the alcohol and beverage market. And you just look in a small town, like how many wine liquor stores are there in a small town? And
tons.
It's tons. But it's just common practice. It's commonplace. 20 years from now, I feel like that will be, you just need a generation to sort of absorb the change.
Yeah. And there's a situation that happens, or a window of time, where also until everybody gets used to operating within the regulations, not just anticipating what the implication of those regulations might be, but actually operating in it. It isn't until people get to the realization that we can create a business and it functions, and that isn't the number one priority, that then things really start to shape out with innovation.
That's been a big part of my job in the last couple of months, is educating the public, because even though MRTA passed 2.5 years ago, right now we're at the stage where we're before community boards that have not opted out, and we're trying to get them comfortable with the concept of having regulated spaces, and they're still against it. And it's kind of like, wait a second, you have legacy market stores here that aren't getting taxes.
Right.
You don't know what's being sold. This is a really good thing for your community. You have to show ID to get in. It's a very good thing. But again, it's hard to change some old school thoughts about what cannabis is and isn't.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I want to thank you for coming in first up, because that's hard, the third day of MJ Biz, to come in first in the morning. So thank you so much. It's good to see you as always. And we look forward to connecting with you as things unfold in New York.
Yes. And reach out anytime. New York is an ever-changing landscape. So what is today may not be tomorrow.
Or even on Monday. Things might have wholesale changed. Elizabeth Kase, thank you so much for joining us here today. We're going to come back with Graydon Wellborn from White Ash Group. In just a moment, he's somewhere around the corner. We'll get him on. Elizabeth, thank you so much.
Thank you.